Welcome to FranESG, your guide to a sustainable future. Are you curious about how businesses can be more eco-friendly and social responsible? FranESG is the podcast for you. Whether you're considering a career switch, looking for an ESG job, or just want to understand ESG, we make it simple and relatable. We share real-life stories, expert advice, and practical tips. Perfect for anyone wanting to learn how ESG can improve businesses and our world. Join us on FranESG and start your journey towards a greener, more responsible future today.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone. Today I'm not the one asking questions, but Cyprien Fune, a molecular biologist and PhD researcher focused on developing novel targeted cancer therapies, is interviewing me on ESG and ESG consultancy, but also on how we can green labs. Are you ready to hear what I have to say? Well, hang in there and listen to today's podcast. Hi, Cyprien.
Hi, Francine. Thank you very much for accepting to answer my burning questions, especially my interest into your activities at ESG Consultancy. Let's look forward to it. And I have so many itching questions here that I really want to hear your answers on them.
All right, let's go and start with your podcast that is named
Research and Science Diaries, yes.
All right, then here we go. FranESG meet Research Diaries.
Yes, of course. Let's go. Welcome back to Research and Science Diaries. I am your host, Cyprien. Today, we will be joined by Francine Caron, who is an environmental sustainability expert, a PhD candidate, and founder and CEO of ESG Consultancy, a firm that is dedicated to helping companies to transition from more environmentally and socially friendly practices. Francine has a dynamic career spanning across different sectors from real estate to finance and aviation. A truly impressive career in sustainability management at skis and Belgian air traffic control. And recently, she made a bold step to switch from being an employer to become an entrepreneur. Her startup is growing rapidly, and today we will be learning more about her journey, the challenges, and the successes that she's experienced, and how she balances these responsibilities. We will also be discussing what sustainability truly means in simple terms, and how companies can easily transition from the heavy energy consumptions to more green and environmentally friendly practices. Plus, she will also share practical tips for how we can all get involved in this important global shift. Francine, thank you for joining us on Research and Science Diaries, and welcome.
Thank you, Cyprien. It's nice having me here.
Yes, I've known you for a while. I think we've not met for a while as well. Commitments will not permit. But now we've been friends together for about 4 years, as friends, as PhD buddies as well. Let's start with you telling us, our listeners, more about your background. Tell us about your academic and professional experience.
All right, Cyprien, here we go. So, as you know, my background is quite diverse, but there's actually a common thread running through it, helping businesses integrate sustainability into their operations is really the common thread. I started my career in development aid with the United Nations in Liberia on a post-war mission working on projects that had direct impacts on communities. So from there, I transitioned into the corporate world where I focused on social corporate responsibility, microfinance, and later aviation sustainability. And that journey eventually led me to launch my own ESG consultancy firm, where we help businesses, especially in the aviation, logistics, and heavy industries, navigate sustainability challenges, regulatory frameworks like CCRD, decarbonization strategies. And more recently, I also been working on initiatives related to premium carbon credits and ESG upskilling through our newly division ESG Academy. So I basically bring both a strategic and hands-on approach to sustainability. I'm always looking for ways to bridge the gap between compliance and real impact.
My God, that is quite a background, transition from one sector to another. But then with this dynamic career, from working in finance to skis and leaving your job to launching your own company, that is ESG consultancy, of course. I mean, who leaves a fancy job at skis? Huh? It's quite an ideal situation. When you look back, how do these experiences help you in shaping the way you run your company?
All right. First, I have to little bit correct you. The name is Skies, not skis. So, it is
Thank
air
you.
traffic control. So it's Skies. I know it's written in a way that it sounds like skis, but sorry about that. I have to correct. But indeed, that's a great question. Why would you leave such a job, right? I know some of my family members are like, why are you doing that? But you're right. Leaving a secure and well-established role at Skies to start my own consultancy wasn't obvious choice, but looking back, every step in my career really led me to this point. My time in finance taught me how to analyze risks, understand investments, and think strategically about sustainability from a business perspective. So working at Skies deepened my understanding of aviation, air navigation, and the operational challenges that come with implementing ESG measures in a highly regulated industry. But what really shaped the way I run my company is the realization actually that ESG isn't just about compliance. It's about long-term value creation. So my background in development aid as well showed me that sustainability is only effective when it's practical and actionable. So when I launched ESG consultancy, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just advising companies on what they should do, but that we're really helping them bridge the gap between ambition and implementation. And to be honest, having worked inside a large organization, I also know the internal roadblock companies face when trying to push sustainability forward. And that insight allowed me to offer not only just solutions, but realistic, results-driven strategy that actually work in the real world. And on top of that, I'm really not a 9 to 5 girl.
That is quite an insight because being at the center of where you've worked in sectors that actually have a lot of effect on the environment. But when you look at these transitions moving from different sectors, what actually was that point? What actually sparked, your curiosity or your passion for environmental sustainability?
Well, my passion for environmental sustainability wasn't something that started in a boardroom or through the regulations. It's actually deeply personal. I was born in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, a city that has been affected by oil spills and environmental degradation. I witnessed firsthand how pollution could devastate entire communities, from poisoned water sources to thick layers of soot covering homes. It's just impossible. It was impossible to ignore the impact. I moved to Belgium, where I also grew up in an industrialized area. And as a kid, I loved swimming in rivers, but I remember one particular summer when pollution was so bad that we weren't allowed to swim anymore. And that really stuck with me. And I actually swam that summer, which was really gross. And it was one of the first moments I realized just how much human activity can change the environment in real time. And then actually, I lived all over the world. When I moved to Texas, I also lived not far off from oil refineries as a kid. And so by that point, I had seen pollution in Africa. I had seen pollution in Europe. And now I was experiencing actually all heavy emissions in America, in Texas. And coming from a background, from a family that was having businesses in maritime and oil, I truly understood what pollution meant. So not only in theory, also in reality. And I think that kind of spurred, I'm the odd one out, right? That spurred what I'm doing today. So that drove me into sustainability, not only as a career. And as you can hear, I'm very passionate about it, but as a mission. I wanted to help industries find ways to operate environmentally and socially responsible, not just to meet regulations, but to ensure that future generations don't grow up with the same environmental challenges that actually witnessed at firsthand. So today, through ESG consultancy, I work with industries like aviation, logistics, heavy manufacturing to help them transition towards sustainability in a way that makes sense, both environmentally, socially, and financially. Because I know and I've seen what happens when sustainability is ignored. Like I said, I worked in Liberia on a post-war mission. I saw that there as well. So I also know that real change is actually possible when you take the right steps.
I'm really interested with the way you round it up, because you come from a family that was they had businesses in hydrocarbon, and then you also experienced the effects in your own daily life as growing up, and then you actually were able to take the bold step to now say, okay, this is a time where I play a role to actually try to mitigate and try to help others to solve the issue. But also, a transition from being an employee to becoming an entrepreneur is a big leap, What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during that switch, and how did you overcome that?
Well, leaving a stable position to start my own company wasn't a sudden decision. Like I said, I wasn't the 9 to 5 typical
But
employee.
you've been in business for a while, anyways.
And that's where I'm going to get to. So it was actually a matter of when and not if. I've always known I was made to be an entrepreneur, and coming from an entrepreneurial family, it was really just when and not if. So that mindset was also ingrained in me from a very early age. I thrive on building things, creating solutions, moving fast. And, in many companies, you can't move as fast as you want. So even while I was working these full-time jobs, as you know, I always had a side hustle running in the background. Those are the businesses that you're referring to. So the only difference now is that my side hustle has become the main business. And that being said, there was a turning point. At Skies, I saw firsthand how sustainability in aviation wasn't just an option anymore. It was becoming a necessity. It is their social license actually to operate. So many organizations, especially in highly regulated industries like aviation, were struggling to figure out how to integrate ESG into their operations in a way that made sense. And I realized that there was a real gap in the market for a consultancy that could bridge the world of compliance, business strategy, and real environmental impact. I knew I had the industry knowledge, the network, and the experiences to make a difference, but I also knew that change wouldn't come from within a corporate structure. It has to come from the outside, where I could move faster and work with multiple companies at once. So I took the leap, and looking back, I do not regret it for a second. The need for ESG consultancy, especially in aviation, logistics, and heavy industries, is only growing. And because I understand both the technical and the business side of sustainability, I'm able to help companies move beyond just checking boxes and actually create a real change. So in a way, entrepreneurship wasn't a career decision for me. It was the natural next step in what I was always meant to do.
Yeah, I follow ESG's evolution, and it's growing very fast. I must comment to you on that. But looking at this, it's growing very fast. You've been recognized with your activities. You've been runners up for an award. You've had contracts with Air Cargo and many other companies I cannot be counting now. What do you think has contributed to the fast success that you've had with ESG?
Well, I think the biggest factor in ESG's fast growth has been staying laser focused, sharp. From day one, I knew exactly what niche I wanted to serve, helping industries like aviation, logistics, and heavy manufacturing, basically the hard to abate emission sector, to navigate sustainability in a practical and results driven way. So I didn't waste time trying to do everything for everyone. Instead, I focused on high impact services. I built strong industry relationships so that I could position the business as a go-to expert in ESG. And another key factor was being proactive. I never wait for opportunities to come to me. You know that. I create So whether it's launching new initiatives, hosting webinars, or reaching out to potential clients, I always believe in constantly moving forward at a fast pace and to make sure to build credibility by delivering real results, because at the end, a lot of it is, word to mouth publicity. And there's a lot of talk. And what my consultancy sets apart is that we actually help companies to take action, whether it's through sustainability assessment, regulatory compliance, or decarbonization strategy. Yeah.
Like what you just said, because there is a lot of talk about the green transition, but when it comes to practical work, there's a lot of people talking in conferences, workshops, but when it comes to actually doing, that is where I really look up to ESG consultancy for. That is
Yes, there is a lot of people talking and there's not a lot of people doing. There's also a lot of companies that are, coming on the market now. We're ESG experts and sustainability expert, and then we're AI, ESG, and all these things. And I'm also trying them out. I want to see what is new in the market. And then I see that is not based on a lot, actually. So a lot of people that do not have experience in the in ESG or sustainability at all. So I'm not sure what they base themselves on. They really want to kind of like come and make a quick buck actually into this field. But people ask me, but there's quite some competition out there. And I'm like, let them go there. No problem with me. Let them go there, because I know these companies are not going to survive. They don't have the basis. They don't really know what's going on. It took me 20 years to develop my career or this field, and to have this specific knowledge to be able to do it well. Even some of the big players, really, if we look at for example, Green Deal, regulatory compliance, that is new for everyone, but I've started working on that already 4 years ago. I was part of the stakeholder group, so I've done this before. So I can say I'm an expert in that, and a lot of people can. But going back to your question, yeah, the way that we grew is actually resilience and adaptability, and giving up my social life. I haven't seen you in a very long time. You have a new baby.
It's so true, so true.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's almost saying, yeah, I've given up literally my entire social life for this. It is working around the clock, 15 hours a day. There is no way around it. I see a lot of YouTubers saying, create a faceless account, you'll make millions of dollars. That is the new thing. Well, it doesn't work like that. It really does. You got to build it up from the ground, and you got to keep on going and not give up. And that's really been the success.
Yeah, when getting into entrepreneurship is very unpredictable, Have there been any unexpected outcomes or challenges since you started you didn't anticipate?
Yeah, entrepreneurship is full of surprise, and no matter how much you plan, there's always things you don't see coming. One of the biggest unexpected successes actually was for me how quickly it actually gained traction. That I have the biggest players in aviation and logistics that reached out to me soon. Clients like Toyota Material Handling that came, the International Air Cargo Association, and air navigation service providers from different regions asking for support. So that was actually very exciting, and they gave me a lot of validation, but at the same time, it was overwhelming. But on the flip side, I cannot complain. When you start a business, you have to wear all the hats: strategy, sales, execution, even administration. I mean, my hat is as big as the biggest Mexican sombrero, I'd say. And those are all the roles that I played. But also another challenge was really cash flow. Cash flow, you're used to having always, even when I ran a business on the side, when the business on the side wasn't doing well, I always still had my fixed income, right? Now all of that is gone. So when a customer decides not to pay for the first 3 months or pay late, and because you're always having 30-day invoicing, and some of that with very large organizations, that can turn into having the 2-3 month delay, and then you can run into cash flow issues. And especially if you're working with team members that needs to be paid, you need to be sure that they eat even before you eat. So these are, in the beginning, some challenges that you need to go through, and not forget that we live in a very heavy tax system. So you have to take all of these things into account as well. But hey, we keep on going. So it has
Yeah.
its good or it has its bad. It's kind of like a PhD. You have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur and you have to be crazy to do a PhD. So I think I'm twice as mad.
Talking about resilience, you just mentioned PhD. You're also a PhD candidate. You're toggling between entrepreneurship and PhD and controlling, managing people, and also running a startup. I must say, the startup, it's crazy, right? I mean, really crazy. How do you cope with the demands? And again, what is the focus of your PhD? That was where we met. And how is your academic research work influencing the way you run your company?
So balancing a PhD and running a fast-growing business is no small talk. But I've always strived in high intensity environments, and I think that that's also part of growing up in the U.S. You know, I saw people having, being a single mom with 3 kids, still going through work and doing a master's. I mean, there everything is possible. I know in Europe that is not very common to combine a lot of
Yeah,
things, and
yeah,
people
yeah.
always
It's
ask,
really not
"How do you
common.
do it? How do you do it?" Well, I'm not you. I can do it. So, but the key really is discipline and staying laser focused, strategic time management. I really do not waste time on things that don't move the needle, whether it's business or academia. I don't. I really prioritize ruthlessly and I stay focused on what truly matters. But let's be honest, like I said, I've sacrificed my social life for my business, but I put a little bit of that time that I have into my PhD, but really not a lot of time is going into my PhD at the moment, but it's actually 70% done. So it's really a pity because, that small, tiny 30% is
There's always something,
me.
something that is left to be
And
done.
the data is getting old. So I know that I might gonna have to maybe have to do that entire
Yeah,
70%.
that's true.
They get old. But I've told myself, you know what, Francine, do not worry about this. Do not worry about this. In the beginning, I was like, this PhD needs to be done in 4 years. And now I'm like, that PhD will eventually get done. Just relax. Move on with your business. That's your highest priority because if your business is not making any money, you cannot
You are not
even.
making any PhD.
That is for me. But now my PhD, the focus of my PhD is sustainability in aviation. So that ties directly to my work as well at ESG consultancy. So that academic research that I've done, it also given me a deeper analytical perspective of the ESG challenges especially in aviation and logistics. So it keeps me ahead of the curve on regulations, the emerging sustainability trends, and the innovative solutions that businesses can implement. So, in many ways, my PhD work influences the strategic direction of my consultancy as well. So, in this way, they go hand in hand. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I said, juggling both of them really isn't easy. But
Very
you
Yeah.
will
Let's drive deeper into ESG. And Donald Trump is here, is back. And I think, first of all, what do you make of his comeback when it comes to ESG?
Honestly, I'm not too worried about it. A lot of people are stressed out about it, and I'm not. And the reason for that is that his friends have received a lot of money coming from the green funds, right? Let's just look at his favorite buddy, Elon Musk. Elon Musk has received hundreds of $1 millions of this fund. So what I think is going to happen is that we're going to see parallel economies, not only in the US, but in other places as well. So we're going to have a fossil fuel economy. And at the same time, you're going to see a green economy running. Whatever we say about President Donald Trump, he's still a businessman. So you can't call him fully stupid. I think he clearly knows what he's doing, and he's going to use the fossil fuel economy to spur eventually his green economy. Right now, the biggest thing is AI. They want to win the AI race. So they're going to up their fossil fuel game to be able to win that AI race because for AI, you need a lot of
A lot of
fossil
energy.
fuel. Yes.
Yeah.
So I believe once they have won the AI war, let's
Actually,
say, and they are a leader, then they will jump and continue in this green economy. Even let's go deeper into that where I'm not worried. So in the aviation sector, to decarbonize aviation by 2050, we need sustainable aviation fuel. Now, sustainable aviation fuel has really been a struggle on the market. It's very expensive. Right now, Trump has given $400 million to a refinery in America to subsidize sustainable aviation fuel. While we are here struggling with policy in Europe and we're still, talking about it, he's doing it. And I'm definitely not a promoter of President Trump, but I'm not letting my judgment get clouded that his economy is going to be a fully fossil economy. If you look at the state of Texas, very strong Republican state, Texas develops most of its oil industry, but the biggest producer of green energy.
As well, yeah.
So, like I said, focus on the goals, leave out the noise, because people are focusing on the drama. News love drama. It is their product, and people are not seeing what is really happening. Now, in terms of the social part, in terms of diversity, there I see some real issues happening. But in terms of environmental sustainability, I'm not fully convinced, even if he pulled out of the Paris Agreement.
Okay, let's really focus on ESG, because we talk about ESG. Let's break it down in more understanding way to somebody who is not familiar with the terms. So, what is ESG, and how we explain it to someone who really don't understand the concept?
So ESG stands for environment, social, and governance, and it's a framework used to assess how businesses and organizations operate responsibly beyond just making profit. So the environmental part, very simple, looks out at a company, how it impacts the planet, things like carbon emission, waste management, and resource efficiency. And the social aspect focuses on people, how companies treat their employees, suppliers, and communities. And the governance is about leadership, ethics, and transparency. So to ensure that companies follow good business practices and are accountable. Now, if I have to explain sustainability in the simplest way, I'd say this. It's about making sure that we meet today's needs without destroying the planet or making life harder for future generations. And it's really about balance, how businesses can grow, be profitable, create value without harming the environment or society in process. So whether it's reducing pollution or treating workers fairly or making ethical business decisions, sustainability is really about making smarter choices today so we don't have to pay the price tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at it from, again, let's continue with the layman perspective, right, on sustainability. Because sometimes when we talk about sustainability, people listen to it, people are aware of it, or people hear it a lot, but when it comes to individual basis, what can people do? What can people do to actually be part of this sustainability effort, from an individual perspective to small companies and maybe big companies? Maybe you can lay it in a stepwise approach.
So sustainability, whether you're an individual or a small business, there are some simple steps you can take to make a real impact. For example, individuals, what can they do? What can you do at home? At home, you can start with reducing waste, with something as simple as cutting down on single-use plastics and recycling properly. That's one. You can be energy cautious, and that's also cost saving. You can turn off the lights, use energy-efficient appliances, and reduce unnecessary consumption. That's something you can do. You can support sustainable brands. You can buy from companies that prioritize ethical sources, sourcing, fair labor, and environmental friendly practices. You can use transportation widely. You can consider carpooling, biking, or using public transport, for example, when it's possible. Now, for small businesses, they can start, for example, with energy efficiency. They can switch to LED lighting. They can optimize their heating and cooling, reduce unnecessary energy sources, and also work on ways to reduce their packing, recycling. They can reevaluate their little supply chain by focusing also on suppliers that work on sustainable practices. And they can also, a very good one, I think, is measuring and improving for small businesses so they can learn how to track their energy use. They can calculate a carbon footprint for themselves. It does, you know, you don't have to be perfect, you know, but you need to know where you stand as a small business. So, you know, you also know if there's no data, then you can't change it, you know? So, so this is how you can take small decisions over time. You know, sustainability really doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be heavy. You know, it's all about making progress. I'm never going to finger point at anybody. It's really about making progress, starting with small, manageable steps and building from there, really.
And indeed, because if you cannot do it at home with the minor things that you can do, it's difficult to actually be able to drive it in a company. Let's stay a bit on companies or small businesses or businesses as a whole, or companies as well. What does your company, I mean, ESG consultancy, do to make businesses and companies become more sustainable?
So at ESG Consultancy, we help mostly the clients in hard to abate emission sectors. So the big polluters, we proud ourselves on that because we want to take action. So many companies, they know how to be more sustainable. They've had fancy strategic plans maybe already, but they struggle with the how. And we're very practical and hands-on.
Again, came back to, we are back to what I just said before, because there is a lot of talk. People, okay, some companies also say that they are doing it, but how are you doing it? That's the
Yeah.
big question.
The how is the problem of very many, and especially when you're a large corporation, you have the tendency to bring in the big four, for example, and they come with strategic plans and very fancy presentation, but at the end, you're gonna have those plans and you still don't know how. And that's usually what we come into the picture, as we're very practical and hands-on. So just to give you some examples, so we do ESG strategy and compliance. What does that mean? So we help you do basically the regulations like the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the CSRD compliance. And that is, to keep it simple, the EU has created the Green Deal, which is planned to make Europe carbon neutral. And it's a set of policies. And within that set of policies, you have the CCRD, where companies need to report their ESG data. So we're going to help them actually go through that process. The same for Corsia, which is carbon credits for the aviation industry. A lot of them don't know how to do it or where to get them. We can guide them. We also develop our own carbon credit. EcoVadis is a sustainability supplier assessment. So we can help them with that. We do gap analysis to see where they are today, where they want to go to, and what steps they need to take. And if they need us to do the steps for them, we also train them through our ESG Academy. We train the staff because there's always a lack, so they can do it in the future. You know, we don't have to stay there forever, but the staff need to be able to do this in the future. So we upskill them, we reskill them, so that they don't have to rely all the time on external consultants, because then you have your payroll, then you have the external, you need a lot of it. So we're also going to help with carbon footprints and also with social programs, because for us, it's very important that you really work on the E, the S, and the G, and the sustainability is not only about environment.
Okay, great. I have the conception that sustainability and profitability are two conflicting ideas, right? How do you help companies find the balance between being eco-friendly and remaining competitive in the market? Because I feel that is where some of these companies get into a trap, and they feel like maybe we just keep doing what we are doing, you know?
Yeah, so many businesses, they hesitate, you know, because sustainability means high cost for them. So many initiatives require investments, but these investments can actually improve financial performance in the long run. So we're going to look at, for example, energy efficiency or waste reduction. It also, in the long run, you will gain, or even creating, for example, a line of sustainable products will bring increased revenue. So to give you a good example, when we had the energy crisis here in Belgium, when was it, a year ago, 2 years ago, when the electricity price, everything was
It was horrible. My
was
God.
horrible. Well, companies that had already implemented, for example, large solar farms, and they were running on alternative energy, they didn't have those issues. They had made the investments a long time ago, and they were now able to go through this crisis with so sustainability is the earlier that you invest, the bigger savings you're gonna have, and that's not only on the environment side but also on the social side. It's really not only a compliance exercise, because ESG is really, sustainability is going beyond compliance, and also with the new regulatory environment, for example, you're gonna get penalties if you don't do it. So again, you're gonna pay. If you're not gonna do it, you're gonna pay. It's a holistic business model that creates long-term value. We also see that companies that have invested into ESG and have their ESG in order, they're actually doing better than other companies as well. And in terms of investment, it attracts, you're not only investing, but it also attracts investment, because banks are going to look at your ESG score before investing in you. And that doesn't count only for large corporations, but also small family businesses, for example. They're also going to look at their ESG scores. If we look at, for example, governance of a small family business, the bank is going to ask you, what is your succession planning? Before, no bank or no family company is often busy with that. And that's also part of ESG. So people always think, oh, it's only for the big corporations, but it really isn't. And it creates a long-term competitive advantage. And for me, when I look at it, and I have my son who works with me as an ESG assistant, he's always like, but mom, isn't this really logical? I mean, isn't it what businesses should have always done? I mean, really?
Yeah, that is very interesting. Let's go now to my own background. Let's talk something in my field. Let's look at sustainability in research laboratories, because research labs often rely on a lot of energy-intensive equipment and resources. First, what changes can labs implement to adopt more environmentally friendly practices?
Actually, I love that question because, I haven't done ESG for a lot.
Yeah, I'm trying to be more practical, away from doing mine at home. What can I do in the lab?
But usually I charge for this kind of thing. I'm not sure that question. No, I'm kidding. Just so the top of my head, research labs, I'm sure they can consume a very high amount of energy, especially because you're using specialized equipment, high instruments, and they're running 24/7 in very strict environmental controls, I would say. Well, this I know from you, what you've been telling me about your time in the lab. So what could you do in a lab? Just at the top of my head, work with energy efficient equipment. Start with switching to energy efficient equipment that have lower energy consumption. Make a kind of a plan, like a rationalization plan, where you go from old equipment to new equipment, basically decarbonizing your equipment. If you're using fume hoods, for example, you can optimize that as well, because they're major energy guzzlers. You can also use variable air volume systems. You can switch to LED lighting, installing smart controls. You can also install meters everywhere so you can see where the culprits are. Power down on unused equipment. I'm sure that in a lab, a lot of people just leave everything on and they're so tired and they just go home. So you can start implementing automated shut-off systems for non-essential equipment, I would say. That would probably save you already a couple of
A lot of
thousand.
energy, yeah, yeah, yeah.
In terms of sustainable procurement, and you can also opt for suppliers that offer green chemistry alternatives to reduce its waste. You can use glassware instead of single-use plastics, maybe biodegradable pipettes, I would think, and also use
Well, maybe that is an idea that we don't know. It might happen
question.
in
I'm
future.
having a podcast with my biodegradable pipettes.
Yeah, maybe we can plug that into for scientists to try to bring this
Exactly.
up.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's something for you to do. And you and I, we always said we wanted a business together. So here we go. I don't know if it exists, but yeah, you could maybe look into that. What else could you do? Proper waste segregation, uh, very strong and effective sorting for chemical, biological, and electronic waste, I would say. Solvent recycling, make sure that there's a solvent purification and reuse system instead of constant disposal. And then instead of buying new equipment, maybe the labs can implement, maybe they already do, I don't know, but they can do an equipment sharing program with other institutions. So to maximize resource use, that could be done. Another one I would think of is water conservation strategies, switching to single pass cooling, closed loop systems, air cooled systems that can dramatically reduce water usage. But there are some programs, I know that there's programs like My Green Lab certification, in which do you know about that one, that program?
Yes, I think so. I think so. But I must say that our lab it's really doing well in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
direction when it comes to sustainability. There has been a lot of innovations, changing our lighting and then also equipment. I think we are moving in the right direction. Yeah, I'm really happy. I really wanted to bring this up to also understand if we are doing enough or if we are lagging behind. But I feel we are gradually moving.
Well, I just only
We
talk
still need to do a lot. Yeah.
environment sustainability part. I don't know how you're doing on the social or governance side.
Let's leave it at this level. Let's not go
Okay,
through it.
that's usually where a lot of companies stop. They just you see how easy it is. Like, oh, leave it.
Because if we poke into the social aspects, it might somehow let's go ahead. Okay. One other thing when it comes to sustainability in research laboratories is funding, because like when you look at some of the things that you enumerated, some of the shifts that we can do, this obviously will need some funding. How do you think research labs can adopt sustainability into these activities with limited budget? Things that labs that are already running, how can they use limited budget to also make this transition?
Well, funding is always an issue when it comes to sustainabilities. And I bet for research labs, they're always operating on tight budgets. But the good news is that adopting sustainable practices doesn't always require huge investments. And also, don't forget that there's many cost savings and there's also low cost solutions possible. Like, for example, if you can cost save, you can focus first on the cost saving sustainability measures, for example, and then also maybe leverage grants and sustainability funding. Like I said, the Green Lab, My Green Lab. Then there's also LEAF. I don't know if you know it, Laboratory Efficient Assessment Framework, and NIH sustainability grants that supports research labs in adopting greener practices. So I would definitely have a look at that, because many governments, they offer grants and incentives. I would also check also with the EU that they might have grants for this sort of greening labs. And then implementing waste reduction, because waste is very expensive. And then you can also make sure, like build a culture of sustainability that costs you nothing, to make sure that your staff and students are really trained into green lab practices. And with green lab practices, I mean really like environmental sustainable hygiene, let's say, turning off equipment, efficient use of chemicals. You could even put like some targets on that. You can establish a green lab committee, for example, that costs you nothing, where you can all brainstorm together on.
That is very, very nice proposal, because I was just saying now I'm going to take a lot of these recommendations to our lab manager. But again, I just think the idea that you just brought up, like, you can make a committee which is focused into the green transition and stuff. It can really be very instrumental in implementing some of these changes that are really important. Francine, thank you very much. I really learned a lot from this. From trying to see how I can one lab can be much more better. Let's look at some of your personal balance and coping strategies. First, we will start by you combining a PhD with entrepreneurship. How do you stay motivated and energized through the ups and downs?
How focus on the goals, and the rest is noise and clutter. It is that simple, really. That's all you can do. And honestly, I felt that, doing a PhD is harder than running a business. Like I said before, both of them are big things. So really sharp laser focus. Family, health, work. And your work is your PhD, so you know what to do. And then we'll see each other when all this is past and we'll still be good friends.
Indeed,
And if
we will
you
really.
get your lab manager to sign a contract with ESG consultancy, we'll be even better friends.
Well, that can happen, But many people also talk about when we also look at, getting into a new environment is always very challenging, like we've discussed. But also sometimes you find yourself in a situation of imposter syndrome. I think we've discussed this before. When it comes to you getting into your role as an entrepreneur, have you find yourself thinking if you actually know what you're doing or not?
Honestly, I don't even want to think about imposter syndrome. I don't want to think about any syndrome. I don't have time to be thinking about syndromes and such. I do
But
not.
what?
So if I feel a little bit like that, I just suck it up and I continue because otherwise these bills are not going to get paid. It is that simple. So I just put it straight into the trash can. Done. No time.
Amazing. I love that. I love that. When I look at ESG consultancy, the rate at which it's growing, the rate at which it's contributing to a lot of to actually getting companies and individuals to adopt strategies. Not like it's not a social media company. It's actually a company at work. What are some of your upcoming projects when you look at the future, and what are some of your goals, and which ones are you most excited about?
Well, actually, I'm actually excited. I'm leaving at the end of this month to go to Kazakhstan. And
Well, you always look for something.
I'm going to speak at a conference of ICAO and the Kazakhstan government, also on gender in aviation, so social sustainability in aviation. I'm also speaking this month at a conference for Goodyear. I'm very excited about that as well. We're diving into maybe signing partnerships in South America and Sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm very excited for those things to come. And
Yes, that is very interesting. What are some of your top three life priorities? Top three, because you might have more than top three.
my son, my health, my work.
Amazing. It's a loop, All have to be balanced, else you become very unstable. I love that. Francine, thank you very much for sharing your experience and your background, which is very inspiring. And I also want to tell you in person that I've learned a lot, especially when it comes to what practically I can do as a citizen or as an individual in trying to transition to more environmentally friendly practices, as well as again with the research laboratories, because it's something that is not talked a lot about, but I feel it's really important that all the sectors, all the areas in the society are moving into transitioning from more efficient energy sources and environmentally friendly practices. Thank you again, and to our listeners, thank you for joining, and see you on the next episode on Research and Science Diaries.